Let's take a model apart. We're not really going to use a hammer. Alright, so let's begin disassembling this. Before I start on any project, I like to create what I call a roadkill list. We've all seen the YouTube channel Roadkill, and they always have a list of what they're going to do on their project. And that's what I've done here. I've outlined some of my major goals with this project, and occasionally, actually probably every time, I always forget at least one thing on here and I'll end up writing it in later. But while the model's together, I like to go over it and evaluate what I'm going to do on the model. We saw that in the last video where I went through and I showed you guys the various things that I'd like to do to turn this into my D11N. So let's get to the disassembling part. Now the easiest part in taking apart a model is obviously screws. One of the most challenging parts is rivets and pins, which are the other two ways that models are held together. The rivets are like these little brass tubes that are flared out at the ends, and then pins are these. They're held in by pressure. It's a very tight fit where they go in, and that's basically what keeps them from coming out. But I actually find pins to be easier to remove than rivets. Rivets, you drill the end out, but you can always risk ruining the model when you drill it out. Another thing that's extremely important to keep in mind when you're disassembling something is take your time. A lot of times with these, when I disassemble them, things are going to get broken, but those are things that I intend on replacing anyways. You can't remove things like rails without breaking them, and when you do remove pins, sometimes you will scratch the paint. I don't really care if I scratch the paint on this because it's going to get repainted pretty much the entire thing. The only part I'm probably not going to repaint is like the bottom of the undercarriage, because everything else is going to be getting some form of work on it. And even the stuff that I'm not going to be touching, like the side arms, I cannot remember what these are called. Somebody leave it in the comments, but they did a pretty bad job painting this, so that's going to get repainted. The hydraulics are going to get repainted as well because I don't like the look of the yellow plastic. It doesn't even match the paint. And for paint, I use the Caterpillar rattle can that you can get from the dealership, and I'll show you guys that later. One more thing that I didn't mention on the last model video is I'm going to replace these with metal tracks. These rubber ducky wah things are going bye-bye. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to try to pop this pin out of here, and then that pin out, and then we're going to try to remove the blade. For this, I would have to leverage pressure underneath here and apply it to here because I can't get a fix under that pin, and there's no way to oppose the pin and push it out. Now if you're ever going to use leverage on something and you want to try to save the paint, wrap the tip of the tool in painter's tape, like masking tape, and when you apply pressure to something, be cognizant of where you're applying that pressure. It seems easier to come in under here and apply the pressure, but when I do that, I end up putting the pressure on this, which is a thin little metal piece, and by putting pressure on that, I'll end up bending it down or breaking it. So I've opted to apply my pressure to the top of this piece right here, which will give me a more solid grounds for leverage. The tool I'm using is a panel removal tool. It's you can find this at any auto parts place. I like them because they're wider and they provide some leverage. And there's also a gap in the middle in case you need to try to go around something. I tried to lift this in the back, but it slips a little bit on that metal, and I don't want to mess it up too much, even though the detail on that is pretty bad, and we could go and redo it. So let's squeeze it under here and see if I can get that pin to pop out just a little. I'm not trying to remove the pin entirely right now. I just want to get it up enough that I can get a hold of that pin and pop that out. Let something move. Alright, so then we're going to opt for the twisting motion here. Just twisting it to the left, and as you can see, it just raised this up a bit. Got the pin exposed. What if I can use this to get the pin out? And then A small tool here. And I will be reusing these pins, so I don't want to jack them up too much. Another good thing to bring up, containers. Keep your stuff organized. Don't just throw your pins in a pile on the corner of the desk and expect to find them later and put them back in some sort of order. I like to use multiple, these are just like mint trays, and so all of the pins and items that come out for the blade and its associated parts will go into one, and then pieces from the ripper will go into the other. It just helps you keep things organized. You can label them if you want. I'm probably not going to label these. Alright, so we got one side off. Oh, I'm going to cut that off too. That basically is what limits the blade from going up and down. You'll notice on most dozer models they have that, so if you want, you can remove those on your models to get a little bit more rotation out. Just be wary that you can end up taking the hydraulic piston completely out of the cylinder if you push it down too low. Alright, let's take the other side out. Alright guys, this second side is proving to be a little bit more difficult to get off. It's because it's no longer locked down over here, so I don't have that leverage that I did when I was doing the other side. It's starting to mar the side of the undercarriage up a bit too, which is fine. I can fix that when I go to rebuild the model, but it would have been nice to not have to do that. Just remember, when you go to take something apart like this, these aren't meant to be taken apart. They're put together once by the factory, and then they're supposed to just go on their shelf. Not supposed to get torn down. But that's not how we do things here on my channel. We take stuff apart. Alright, let's see what other tools I got. Whenever you're using pliers, watch your fingers. I have the most of my injuries that I've gotten messing with tools. See, I went and marred that all up. Most of the injuries that I've gotten with tools have been with pliers. Like I've left my finger there and I've been grabbing on something and then it slips and goes down and pinches the finger under it, or I've had too close of a grip and when it slipped off it closed and pinched my finger in there. You get those nice blood blisters going on. It's not good. Alright, let's just continue with this tool and see if I can pop that pin out. There we go. And if you get a close look at these pins, you can see if this will focus. I'd like to get a different camera eventually. This one is more meant for shooting at a distance and shooting people. I don't think it gets detail up close very well, but there's a little bit of like rough notching on the bottom of this pin, and that's what helps hold it in place, which is great because it makes being able to reuse these a lot easier. Alright, let's lift these off. Alright, the blade is off. Set this to the side and we'll continue tearing this down a bit more later. Just want to get the rest of the stuff off. I think I'll take that out later. Alright, let's pull the tracks. And what's next here? Alright, got the blade off. We're going to take the screws out of the bottom here. You see far down in there, they're pretty small. When you're going to take screws out, use a screwdriver that's bigger than you think you need to use, and if it doesn't work, then go down a size. You're more likely to screw the screws up. Rim shot. There are going to be many puns on this channel. If you don't like puns, I don't know what to tell you. I think puns are fun. And another thing I just noticed, so you see I have this thing upside down while I'm taking it apart. What's on the other side? Fragile things like rails and exhausts. It's another great way to break stuff, is not being mindful of what you're putting it on. I'm going to replace the exhaust, so I'm being a bit carefree with it, but again, if there's parts on your model that you're going to try to preserve, be very mindful of what you're applying pressure to. Take your time when you're taking stuff apart. It's easy to get excited and you want to get it apart so that you can start working on your project, but if you're not careful, you'll screw stuff up. Alright, so this guy is off. I'm going to set this, down goes Fraser. Alright. I'll set these off to all this off to the side. I'm not going to be making any modifications to this. So put it away till we're ready to reassemble the model. This will all not need any paint except for where I cut it up. Way to go, Steven. Alright, so how do you get out not rivets, but pins when you don't have any way to leverage them or to pry them out? You have to use something like a punch. And I lied to you guys. I told you guys I wasn't going to use a hammer, but we were going to use a hammer. Here's the biggest one I got. It's actually not very big. It's actually not very small. It's probably actually not even going to work because I probably can't apply enough force with this little guy. Let's see. So what I'm doing, you guys can't see, but I'm taking the punch and I'm putting it on the opposite side of the pin. And when you do this, don't go at it like really hard when you first start. Tap it lightly. Make sure that the pin is moving and not the opposing piece of metal, because I've had that happen before too, where the pin had such a good grip on there that when I went to do that, it took and bent that outer piece out with it. So just be mindful of that. But you saw how easy that came out. Some of them are in there really good, and at that point then you need to grab a larger hammer and use that. Let's finish this side off first. This is where it gets tricky, where you don't have much room. So that's going to come out easy. That's already loose. One problem with this pin style is if they're not in there very good, they can come out easily. Like if you get a model like this for a kid to play with, these pins will come out easily if they're not pressed in well. Manipulate it so many times it just falls out. Actually, the donor model that I got the tracks for this one from was definitely played with by a kid. I think it was played with in a litter box because there was like cat litter stuck to it, but it had a few missing pins. Alright, so let's take the rest of these pins out. Oh, swing and a miss. Alright, not really going to do much with these for now. Later we'll obviously add the hoses to them and repaint this. I think we're going to be repainting a lot more of this than I thought we were. Set those off to the side. Those are for down the road. Alright, last thing to do is take the pistons out. These punches are really inexpensive. You grab them at Home Depot, my local hardware store, and I think they're like $9. Give you guys a better shot of that. Sorry, still learning camera stuff. Just putting these back in here for right now. It's a good place to keep them. Now when I do my customization work on models, I like to take a modular approach to it, meaning that I work on one piece till it's nearly complete, usually all the way up to needing primer or paint, or maybe all the way up to needing filler, and then I move on to the next piece. Don't hopscotch around. Try to keep it section by section. It'll keep you a bit more organized, and I think the projects turn out better because by the time you're like mentally exhausted with working on one piece, you're ready to go to the next one. So I'm just looking over the pins right now, just making sure that they all match so that I can throw them in the same container without any worry, and it looks like they do. So in the container they go. I'm just, again, putting them in a little dish. What will we be serving this evening? Oh, a dish of pins. Okay, so this thing is pretty much stripped down. I don't have my rotary tool yet, so we're not going to get to work on this. I think probably the first thing we're going to start on is going to be the ripper, or maybe, probably actually this, because I think I'll want to use the rotary tool on here as well. Or maybe not, maybe I'll use my drill press. Get pumped with the press. Okay. Speaking of drill, let's drill some rivets out. Alright, so we have our cab unit here. This is obviously a part that we're going to work on. This is going to get cut up so that I can make a single piece that goes across the back of it. But as you can see, the rollover protection bar is riveted in place, so those will need to be drilled out, and then they'll be retapped later, and I'll screw them back on. And yeah, that's going to need to come apart obviously so that I can detail the inside of the cab. I keep mentioning staying organized, and I can't mention it enough. When you're done with the tool, put it away. I used to be so bad at it, and I still am. I literally just put away a bunch of tools that I've been using because I've been so focused on this that I just reach, grab, set on desk, reach, grab, set on desk, and then you end up with an entire pile of tools all over your desk, and you end up with a workspace like this big because you've put stuff everywhere. Find a way to put stuff back. On the tested channel with Adam Savage from Mythbusters, he made a really good point. Drawers are where tools go to die. Well, we don't all have the luxury of being able to put everything up in front of us, but definitely having like a backboard where you can hang hammers and screwdrivers and the tools that you use frequently will really help you stay organized, because that way they are right there where you can see them, but they're not down on your workspace. And then in your drawers you can put all the things that you don't use as frequently, or things that are already in their own small containers like drill bits and small screwdrivers, and you can still have an organized drawer space. That's definitely something to remember to use. Okay, so for the drill bits, for drilling out rivets, I like to grab one that is the same diameter as the outer diameter of the flare on the rivet, and you basically just want to center the bit on the rivet and then drill down into it. But be careful, because if you drill too far, then you're going to start drilling into the model. If the goal is just to drill off the end of the rivet. And if you can, sometimes there are these drill bits that are flat, almost like a router. I think they're used for milling machines. That would be even more ideal because you get a straight, flat cut. All right, let's talk about setting up your drill press. When I'm working with my press, I like to have a piece of wood between my project and the deck. It's a little bit softer than the metal, and it won't scuff up my die cast. As far as positioning the bit, you don't want the bit sitting right on top of your drilling surface. You want a little bit of space, and I think it's ideal to have the lever coming almost straight out, because that gives you the most leverage leverage on a lever, and that way you're not trying to like bottom it out. It's also a little bit better for the bearing in the press. This is a very small drill press, so it only has the single arm on the lever, and it also doesn't have a whole lot of, I think it's only like 1 inch of movement. And don't forget safety goggles. All about the safety. Like seriously, the one time that you don't wear goggles is going to be the time that something flies out and hits it. So I'm just checking, making sure everything is centered here. Again, this is a very inexpensive drill press, so I don't have like a laser sight on it and 3D optics and all the other fancy stuff that I'd like to have. Alright, let's drill a rivet out. Shavings. And let's check our work. See, is there any mobility in it? Can I move that side of it? It kind of looks like it. As you can see, we were able to get down into it without tool here, without drilling too much into the actual die cast itself. like a flat edge, just kind of push that lip over. Let's do the other side and see if we can pop it free. Alright, I drilled it out a bit more, and I think we might have to give it a little bit of a schmack with the punch. Let's give it a little bit more of a drill. Drill, drill, drill. Every time drill. Come on. All this talking is making me hoarse. Nay. Alright. I'm going to work on this a little bit more and I'll bring it back to you guys when I pop it off. Actually, I'll drill it out a little bit more on screen because you guys have been sitting through all this drilling. I know you guys want to see me pop that rivet out. Come on, rivet, you got all these people watching. Do it for the fans, man. Yes, with the power of chest leverage. All right, it's out, it's off. Look, it's VO Ropes D11. Enjoy all the dust in your face. Actually, it's pretty rad though. I kind of like that look. But I'm not gonna do it. All right, so we got this apart. Next, we need to pop out. Is that supposed to be a control lever? Yeah, we're going to be detailing the interior big time on this thing. This? That's not okay. Let's get something sharp. And that is a dog outside my house, yelping and yelping. And I'm back. Sorry if you guys can hear that yelping outside. My neighbor's dog doesn't know how to deal with cats. Alright. So we're just taking, so basically what they do when they install these, it's a little plastic post that comes through and then they melt it flat. So all I'm doing is cutting that flat piece off. And to reinstall something like this, all you have to do is glue it back in. Remember, when you're using sharp objects, be mindful of what's opposing it. You saw just a second ago I had my finger like right there, and then I had this there. If that slips, yeah, it's stitches time. Alright, so our control lever, that's pretty weak looking. And the chair. Oh, it's a two-piece chair, look at that. Alright, save that for later. Alright, it's pretty much stripped down. Alright, the rails. I'm not going to be keeping those. Those are pretty lame looking. And then we have the filler caps here as well. Probably will reuse those. Let's go ahead and cut those out. Same thing, it's just melted close on the back side. So we just need to cut that all free with the blade. Alright, so this whole thing has been stripped down completely. So I'm going to put that off to the side. So that'll be one of the things that we're going to start cutting on. And last thing, or second to last thing to disassemble, the cab. I'm not going to be reusing these grab rails, so I'm just going to pop them off. I'm going to be remaking them out of brass. It's easier to cut them off this way than it is to try to take them off from the inside. And just push them down through. Alright, cab stripped down. I'm actually going to take the cab glass and set it off to the side away from my desk because I don't want to get it all scratched up. Another thing you can do is take masking tape and wrap it around if you're going to leave it on the desk, but I don't want it to get scuffed. So I will put it away somewhere else. Alright, cab is done. And again, keeping everything organized in little trays. Let's break down the ripper. Kind of a neat little unit where it just slots on. It's cool if you had another model, I guess you wanted to put this on, you could probably do it pretty easily. As far as this thing goes, I think I'm just going to take out these pins because this is the only part that I'm going to do any work on. This back part I'm not going to. Just looking it over here. There's a little screw in there. I think I'm going to take that out and see if that makes it any easier. Oh, what that does is take out the backing plate in there and then allows these to come right out. Cool, I don't even need to knock those pins out. I will still take those pins out anyways, but that's a nice way to get that off. A bit fidgety because everything is flapping all over the place here. No, it's not going to work. Nice try though. Right. I think I'm going to just leave these pins in there right now. They're in there pretty good. It's funny when you take something apart, it definitely changes your plans for what you're going to do with this. As I stated before, I'm going to cut the shank off, drill this out, so that I can make a new shank that can be height adjustable. When you open it up, you see that there's this little piece in there, this little tube that goes to the screw that holds this in place. But it's not really going to matter because what I'm going to do is reattach this permanently and seal it all up, so it won't be a two-piece design anymore. But I definitely will play into how I reattach all this stuff. Actually, no, it won't, because I'll just pull those pins out and I'll press them back in. So that's not going to be a problem either. But what I may have to do is create a channel inside there. Probably just take a piece of brass and bend it into a little shape. There actually may be a piece already produced that's in that shape. Or I could use polystyrene. Use something. And then this little locking mechanism, once it's all reassembled, then I'll have to figure out how to do that. But what I'll probably do is just mimic this out of brass, these little pieces right here, and then create some sort of spring, or maybe I might have a scrap hydraulic somewhere from another project that I can just install on there. That's actually probably be the best idea. I think I have some tiny hydraulics, and I'll create the action. Pretty neat. And last but not least, this piece. So if you look down inside here, you can see that these are held in place by these little notches, and I suspect that if you turn them in the right direction, they will pop out. But we have other things in the way here, like the air. Oh, wait, no, we don't. Nice. Tough guy, huh? This one's being a little bit of a pain. Well, the rest of this will be pretty much the same as we did before. There's the melted plastic ends in there, and I will go in there and cut those free, and then I think I'll have to take the grill off too. That'll just make repainting it a lot easier, so I'll cut all those out. But yeah, that's it for this episode. On the next episode, we're going to get into building. I think we're going to start with this piece, get right into the brass working. We'll take it to figure out how we're going to go about this. I'm definitely not going to just fill this with putty and then try to smooth it out. I don't think that's going to make a good result. And there's also things that we're going to have to do to detail this. And what I'll do between now and the next episode is I'm going to go online and compare the D11R to the D11N and photos and see what are the details there that we're going to have to mimic and duplicate. And I'll also be adding the lights back here because that looks pretty lame, just little indentations. But thanks for hanging out on the episode, guys. I'll see you next time, and we'll get to work on cutting and brassing and all that other good stuff.